In 1970, September 18th, this was the Samarkand Hotel here in London, England. Hendrix was living here with his girlfriend, Monika Dannemann. She was an artist and ice skater from Germany, and they had a fiery relationship. And basically, this is where it all went down. Jimi Hendrix's last night and day, September 18th, 1970. At the time, Hendrix was actually under a lot of stress. It's said that he had the flu and he wasn't feeling great, and that he had been sleepless basically for 3 days. And a New York doctor told him he should take sleeping pills that night. And apparently he had taken 3 times the amount of sleeping pills that he should have taken, but that's just really part of the story. Earlier that night, he had a meeting with a record producer, but before that, he ran into a Tory, basically politician, and he and Monika were invited in. Apparently, he was a bit flirtatious with a couple of that Tory politician's lady friends, and Monika was not having it. She was very upset. They got into a big fight in the courtyard, and I guess they made up a little bit. She drove him to the party with the record producer, but she was not invited in. That's when Hendrix's other girlfriend was there, and apparently, well, things didn't go so well. They got into a big fight and a shouting match. She came to pick him up later that night, and Monika was told to leave Hendrix alone. Apparently, there was a fight that ensued. So, some say that had something to do with it, but the most popular theory is Hendrix's manager, Mike Jeffries, had basically been feeling threatened that Hendrix was going to leave him and go with another management company. And apparently, he had been embezzling money from Hendrix, and Hendrix had some lawsuits going on. He was basically just really, really stressed out. Maybe he turned to drugs a bit during that time. He famously did not like heroin, but, he did other stuff and drank and things like that. So, there was a lot of turmoil going on in his life at that time. But it is said that Jeffries, again, who took over management of Hendrix from Chaz Chandler, the Animals bass player, that he was feeling threatened. And so he might have gotten some thugs to come and kind of convince Hendrix to stay with him by pouring wine down his throat. That is one theory. But basically what happened is Monika Dannemann discovered his body, apparently, and really she didn't do much about it for like 5 hours. She called friends. Apparently there was drug paraphernalia all over the room, and they were quite worried that the authorities would discover those drugs, and that wouldn't look so good to the press, and that's just not the image they wanted to get out, and she was paranoid about that, certainly. Now, Monika Dannemann committed suicide in 1996, so that is also mysterious. But besides that, you have other theories such as Hendrix was being courted by the Black Panthers, but really didn't want to get involved with politics. He really just wanted to play his guitar. The famous last picture of him is with his black Stratocaster Black Beauty, and he had apparently gone for a jam session couple nights before he died, but he was actually a little bit too wobbly to play. That was with Eric Burden's band War at a jazz club, and he just was not feeling well. So that didn't happen, but the next night it did happen, and he was said to be a bit more subdued than usual. He wasn't really his showy self. The way it had been reported was that Jimi Hendrix had an overdose, and that's how he died in the London News in 1970. But apparently the word around the London scene was that, in the morning it was drugs, and then it was pills, and then it was wine, and then it was vomiting later. So there were lots of rumors going around the London scene. Hendrix was really a shaman, as said by Pete Townsend of The Who. And, the Beatles all saw him. He was really the talk of the town when he first appeared in 1966 in England. Nobody played guitar like him. In fact, Little Richard famously had said, knock it off, basically. He didn't want Hendrix playing guitar behind his back and under his legs and with his teeth. Little Richard wanted to be the star, so there you go. And famously, John Lennon was very, very influenced by Little Richard. So I think the Beatles and the great guitar players, it's said that Eric Clapton was so stressed out when he first saw Jimi Hendrix playing that he was just like chain smoking, and he was just super stressed out. So there was really this aura that emulated from Jimi Hendrix when he was on stage, as Pete Townsend describes it. And so he was an amazing guitar player, but he was also well liked. Nobody had a bad word to say about him. So on September 24th, 1966, Jimi Hendrix came to London and he met Kathy Etching the first night. She was well known on the swinging London circuit, and she was friends with The Who and the Moody Blues, and so she was pretty well known in the social circles. But apparently they hit it off, and they dated until 1969. They moved into this apartment in 1968 and lived here from 1968 to 69, when Hendrix left on the tour circuit. Also next door is Friedrich Handel's house too, which is pretty cool. And so there's a lot of music history right here in this section of London. But very cool that he lived right here, and it's now a museum, top couple floors. It's got a blue plaque as well, thanks to her, and she was a big influence on Hendrix. He first came out with his first single, Hey Joe, and then Purple Haze, but actually The Wind Cries Mary was written apparently after they got into an argument. And so yeah, they were a pretty well-known item. And this is where they actually lived, up on the top floors up here, which again is now a museum. So this is the actual street where the house is on, just for perspective. Very busy downtown London street here. Constant cars swooping by, and this is where they lived. An interesting story is that when Jimi Hendrix arrived in London, the first place he stayed with Kathy Etchingham was actually at 34 Montague Square, and that was owned by Ringo Starr of the Beatles, and so it was basically sublet to him. And Paul McCartney was writing music there, actually, and the word on the street is Jimi Hendrix wrote The Wind Cries Mary there, which is pretty cool. But basically, Jimi Hendrix apparently took some LSD, allegedly, and he messed up the walls, and they had been expensively decorated, so Ringo was not pleased that his posh walls were messed up and had to evict. But apparently they all became and remained friends despite that incident. Their friendship and admiration was proven when Jimmy played Savile Row just a few nights after Sgt. Pepper was released. He came out on Sunday night, the 4th of June, and he played Sgt. Pepper, and the Beatles were very impressed. Also at 34 Montague Street, that's where Yoko Ono and John Lennon's famous album cover was shot for Two Virgins, and I happen to have a very cool signed version. You can imagine being in your mid-20s and a famous rock star. Jimi Hendrix certainly had a lot of lady friends. Now let's take a look at them. The list of Jimi Hendrix's love interests is quite prolific, actually. It's even rumored to include not one, but actually 2 kids. Let's start it off with Betty Jean Morgan, Hendrix's first girlfriend before he was famous, before he joined the Army. It is said that he scrawled her name on his first guitar, his Dan Electro. But unfortunately, apparently Jimi Hendrix stole a couple of cars and had to actually join the Army or go to jail, so he chose to join the Army. And moving on, here she is with James Brown. She was super worldly and hung out with people like Sly Stone, and can be seen in the Jimi Hendrix documentary sitting at his pool, actually. Ahmet Ertegun from Atlantic Records, of course, called her refreshing after hearing her original songs that she actually penned. She dated men from the Harlem scene like Little Willie John and even Sam Cooke, who called her Chinesey because of the way she did her eyes. Here she is with Etta James. But Lithophane Pridgeon really had a thing for Jimi Hendrix. They had met a year before, and then she ran into him again, and she was extremely excited to see him again. They just had that chemistry, and Jimmy really wanted her to be his only woman, really, but she just could not be pinned down. She was worldly, she knew everyone, and, well, she was good, I think, at making men think that she was their only one, but she was a special gal, that's for sure. This is her and Jimmy in front of the Apollo in 1969. Kathy Etchingham is said to be the muse for Hendrix's Foxy Lady, but it was actually Faye Pridgeon, many people say, and here they are together. In 1966, Jimmy met Diane Carpenter, and they had a romance, certainly. And in fact, Tamika Hendrix was born actually in February of 1967, allegedly Jimi Hendrix's daughter. And they had a very, very, kind of a rough relationship. It said that they didn't have a lot of money, and she was secretly working as a prostitute to make money, and Jimmy found out about it allegedly, and then there was a little bit of violence, it is said. So who knows what is true and what is not true, but this is what is said to be true, and allegedly. So there you go. But she is definitely another one of the ladies that Jimi Hendrix is very well connected to. Linda Keith, a 60s fashion model for Vogue, was linked to Keith Richards, and later Jimi Hendrix said that she helped really discover his talent and even got him a white Fender Stratocaster, actually, so that's pretty cool. It said that Red House was written about her. Linda Keith was actually very instrumental in Jimi Hendrix really being discovered. He was playing at the Cafe Wah, and she recommended that Chaz Chandler, of course the bassist for the Animals, he went to see Jimmy because Linda Keith told him he should. And the next year, May 1967, that's when he released Are You Experienced, his first album on Chaz Chandler's label, and the rest is history. He was discovered, and he blew everyone away. Now, here is Hendrix with Ida Mae Wilson in Madison Square Garden. She would later be called Devin Wilson and became really, really intertwined with Hendrix for many, many years. They were certainly intimate together, and she is the inspiration for Dolly Dagger. Hendrix and Mick Jagger, well, they would compete for women, and I think Jagger was famous for trying to steal women all the time, and, Hendrix wanted her around because apparently she could get him what he needed, so to speak, in any town, and she was also into that sort of thing, and eventually fell from the 8th floor of the Chelsea Hotel and died that way. Nobody knows whether it was foul play, suicide, or who knows. But she was seen by Hendrix across a party. I think maybe she cut Mick Jagger and was maybe drinking the blood or something. So there you go. Dolly Dagger, and it rhymes with Jagger, and so there you go. She was also really, really a woman who was well-connected and well-liked by many, many people, actually, back in the day, too. Yes, definitely a muse for Hendrix, and really was his right-hand girl lots of the time, and a lot of other girls were jealous of her, too, but Hendrix definitely had a strong connection to her. Kathy Etchingham was an English writer. She was really instrumental in making sure, after Hendrix died, that his legacy was really shown in a favorable light, and she relentlessly made sure that journalists and everybody that wrote about him or produced something on him would actually see him in a favorable light. She also got that apartment where they used to live, that whole building, historically recognized in London, and so she did a lot of work in Hendrix's memory and honor, and I think they were quite close. She was really the first one that he met when he came to England. This is Eva Sundquist and James Daniel Sundquist, said to be Jimi Hendrix's son. In fact, in the late 70s, he was given inheritance rights. So the story is that Jimi Hendrix went to Sweden in 1968 with the Experience, and then again in January of 1969, and October 5th, approximately 9 months later, well, his child was born. And tragically, it is said that he was going to meet his son in 1970, but he died before that happened. But he did, however, meet Jimi Hendrix's father. So there is some resolve there, I guess. But interestingly, she stayed in Sweden the whole time and really never left Sweden. So I guess a real relationship wasn't very possible. Apparently, there were more legal issues in the 90s, but they never have really gone after Jimi Hendrix's buried body to do the DNA testing. So, although he certainly has inheritance rights, I don't think it's ever been proven by DNA, and of course, the same with his daughter. Carmen Barrero was Jimi Hendrix's girlfriend by 1968, and well, he was really a jealous type, and he didn't like it when his ladies were messing around with other people, although his infidelity was, of course, legendary. He was very jealous of Eric Burdon from the Animals, and apparently he and Carmen would fight quite a bit, actually. So they did have definitely a fiery relationship, to say the absolute least. Here we see Jimi Hendrix with Danish model Kristen Neffer on September 3rd, 1970, really just like 2 weeks before he died. And, well, Devin Wilson was not very happy about it, and apparently found out about it and was calling him, and they were getting into a fight, and Hendrix basically said, hey, just chill out and leave me alone. But this was really days before Hendrix was found dead, and they were together really just like 5 or 6 days before that also. He was apparently trying to hide out, and he was going through some difficulties, a lot of money issues, and he just was not trusting his manager, and probably for the best. Monika Dannemann was a German figure skater, and they met in the Dusseldorf airport in 1969, and it was, of course, in her apartment that Jimi was found dead. So they definitely had a very, very interesting relationship, and unfortunately, her story just really didn't line up. Basically, it was about 5 hours later that she found the body, and Eric Burdon says that he was at the apartment when there was still dew on the cars, and the stories change quite a bit. So whatever the deal is, he was found in her apartment, a basement apartment, in this actual building, down the staircase, and here she is later coming out of that apartment around the time of the funeral. So she's definitely involved in the death of Jimi Hendrix, no matter what happened. And, of course, she's a big figure in the whole story, whatever happened. But they certainly did have a torrid love relationship, I think. And there was certainly a lot of jealousy there, especially on her part. She was not one to really have men unsure about her. It seems like she had a lot of confidence and a lot of men interested in her. But in this case, unfortunately, it just turned out very, very badly for Jimi. And also for her, she ended up committing suicide in 1996. So that really further adds to the speculation. Of course, other ladies that Jimi Hendrix was involved with were the famous plaster casters who would make models of rock stars' private parts, and Jimi Hendrix was among one of those that they did that too. So, his private life was really, really quite interesting, and He certainly had a lot of girlfriends. He was very jealous, apparently, and he was young. I mean, you got to figure he died at 27, and when you're in your 20s, you have all those hormones pulsating through you, and there's a lot of jealousy. Relationships are very fiery because emotions run high, and you're just not that developed. And apparently, he had some violent tendencies. It's said that he was certainly very well, horny individual. In fact, it's rumored that he was thrown out of the army for actually, pleasuring himself a bit too much. And I don't know if that's true, but that's something I heard allegedly. So let me know what you think in the comments. His love life was certainly interesting. His life and death in the fine city of London is very interesting. I also have a video on his house in LA. His house is in LA. His roundhouse, too. That's pretty cool. Check that out. Jim Morrison's Life and Death in Paris. You can watch me play Purple Haze on an acoustic guitar. And I think I'm going to do an electric version of that one, too. Watch my guitar reviews. Lots of Fender Stratocaster reviews as well. I collect guitars and I write music. So watch my Free Your Mind music video that has a lot of my guitar collection in it. And also some of my car collection if you like cars. I am Drivin' Ivan on YouTube, so I hope you will watch my car videos as well. Other rock star stuff that I've done, you can see where Jim Morrison wrote Love Street and People Are Strange in Los Angeles. Check out my video on Banksy's art in Bristol, England also. I even tell you how to import a car from Europe, so check that out. And do watch my guitar reviews if you like guitars. And also watch my literal video for Chris Isaac's Wicked Game. My original music videos include, like I said, Free Your Mind, but also What Would I Say, I'll Never Tell, which is a recent video I did, kind of with the same idea as Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues. Check that one out. And also check out my videos for Mystery, Taken, and Down, Down, Down as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do smash that like button and subscribe if you already haven't. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about all the information that I've covered in this video. It is quite thorough. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Also, watch my very cool video where I actually see a live Beatle in England. It was on this same trip, actually. I did a video on the Beatles in Liverpool and London as well, and I saw a real live Beatle. Check that one out too. And again, thank you so much for watching. I am producer Ivan Katz.